Let's step into the language-twisting and occasionally controversial world of Martin Heidegger. This German philosopher is the David Lynch of 20th century thought, confusing, yet profound, and will leave you going, damn fine cup of coffee.
You know, this is, excuse me, a damn fine cup of coffee.
It's the early 20th century, and philosophy is having an existential crisis. How on brand? And along comes Martin Heidegger, armed with a forest load of neologisms, which is a $5 word for new phrases, words that become a part of mainstream language. And this burning desire to ask the question that's been puzzling philosophers since they first looked at the ocean and thought, maybe everything is water. It's the question of what does it mean to be? Cue Shakespeare. So let's attempt to make this complicated philosopher simple. First up, and this is really the center of understanding his work, is the concept of Dasein. This is Heidegger's concept of Dasein. It's central to his entire philosophical project. So unlike previous philosophers who tried to understand human existence in terms of consciousness, reason, or soul, Heidegger focuses on the concrete, lived experiences of being in the world. So imagine you're a human being, and if you're watching this, you probably are, and if you're a bot, stop watching R2, you're gonna mess up the algorithm. But this means if you're a human, you're not an object. You're not sitting around like a chair or a rock. Therefore, congratulations is in order, because it turns out mom was right, you are her special boy or girl. Why? Because you're aware that you exist, and you can think about your own existence. And that's basically what Heidegger means by Dasein, which translates from German as being there or presence. And Dasein is unique because we're the only beings who can ask big questions about our own existence. We don't just live, we wonder about living. We think about our past, we worry about our future, and understand that we're gonna die someday. And if you're an Enneagram 5, you probably think about how you will die. And this awareness makes us fundamentally different from other things in the world. Think of Dasein as being the main character in a movie, but you're also the screenwriter. That you're not just passively experiencing life, but actively creating meaning through your choices, relationships, and understanding of the world around you. That you're constantly interpreting your experiences and deciding, what do they mean to me? And so a key part of Dasein is that we're always thrown into a world we didn't choose. You were born into a specific time, place, culture, and family. But don't be discouraged that you're 5'9" on a good day. Just me. We're not stuck. We have the ability to make choices, define ourselves, and create our own authentic way of being. And Heidegger believed that most people live in an inauthentic way because they just follow social expectations. But being authentic means truly understanding yourself, accepting your mortality, and making conscious choices that reflect your true self. And so Dasein is characterized by its ability to question its own being and to project itself into future possibilities. It means constantly interpreting itself and the world, making choices that shape identity. This is what Heidegger sees as existence. And this emphasis on the contextual embedded nature of the human existence is a radical departure from the Cartesian notion of the isolated thinking self. And that's just those who followed after René Descartes' philosophy. For Heidegger, we don't first exist and then engage with the world. Our very being is fundamentally shaped by our interaction with the world and others. The second piece to his philosophy is being in the world. Heidegger argues that we're not detached observers of the world, but we're always embedded in it. It's like we're the fish who never left the water, trying to understand what the hell water is. Thank you, David Foster Wallace. And this idea challenged centuries of philosophical thought that treated the subject and object as separate entities. Heidegger's notion of being in the world is a fundamental reframing of how we understand human existence. That instead of seeing humans as subjects observing an external world of objects, Heidegger argues we're always already involved in a meaningful world of practices, relationships, and possibilities. And this concept challenges the traditional subject-object split that has dominated Western philosophy since Descartes. For Heidegger, we don't first exist and then enter into a relationship with the world, but our very being is constituted by our being in the world. And this had three concepts. First was, not going to be a shocker, being in, our familiarity and involvement with the world. Second, the world, the context of meaningful relationships in which we find ourselves. And then third, the self. Not as an isolated I, but as a way of being in the world. And this idea has had a huge impact on fields like phenomenology, cognitive science, and artificial intelligence, because it suggests that we can't understand human cognition or behavior without considering the context in which it occurs. The third aspect of his philosophical system was ready to hand versus present at hand. Heidegger distinguishes between our everyday practical engagement with things, that's ready to hand, and our theoretical detached observation of them, present at hand. It's the difference between using a hammer to build a birdhouse and staring at the hammer, wondering what it's like to be a hammer. Heidegger argues our primary way that we engage with the world is actually ready to hand. And this distinction is crucial to Heidegger's critique of traditional metaphysics and epistemology, because he argues Western philosophy has predominantly focused on things as present at hand, as objects of detached theoretical contemplation. But this misses our more fundamental everyday way that we engage with the world. Ready to hand refers to our practical, engaged way of dealing with things. When a tool is ready to hand, we don't think about it explicitly. It withdraws from our attention because we're using it skillfully. And it's only when something goes wrong, the hammer breaks, for instance, and we understand why our dad yelled at us about the flashlight. That's when we switch to seeing it as present at hand. Present at hand is the mode of encountering things as mere objects with properties, divorced from their practical context. This is a mode of traditional scientific inquiry, where we step back and observe things detachedly. And Heidegger's insight here has been influential in fields like cognitive science, where it's challenged computationalist models of mind, and in artificial intelligence, where it's inspired approaches that emphasize embodied, situated cognition. His fourth concept was authenticity versus inauthenticity. Heidegger talks about the possibility of living authentically by embracing our finite existence and making our own choices, versus living inauthentically by just going along with what the they dictates. And Heidegger's concept of authenticity and also inauthenticity are central to his existential analysis of Dasein. These modes of being are not moral categories, but rather ways in which Dasein can relate to its own existence. So inauthentic existence is characterized by, first, fallenness. It's when we're absorbed in the everyday world, forgetting our own being. Second, the they, conforming to social norms and expectations without questioning them. And third, idle talk, where we engage in superficial communication that glosses over genuine depth and understanding. But authentic existence, on the other hand, involves first a resoluteness, making our own choices in light of our finite existence. Second, anticipation of death. It's embracing our morality as our own most possibility. And thus there is this moment of vision, a heightened awareness of our situation and possibilities. And Heidegger's ideas about authenticity have been hugely influential in existential philosophy and psychotherapy, because they challenge us to confront our own morality and take responsibility for our choices, which leads to his fifth idea, being towards death. Heidegger argues that our awareness of our own mortality is crucial to living authentically. Now, it's not about being morbid, but about recognizing we have a finite nature and using that to inform how we live. So he was saying, remember you're going to die, way before it became a Silicon Valley productivity hack. And Heidegger's concept of being towards death, it's one of his most provocative and influential ideas, because he argues that death is not just something that happens at the end of life, but is actually a constant possibility that should shape our entire existence. So for Heidegger, death is Dasein's own most possibility, because it's the one thing no one else can do for you. And recognizing our morality allows us to break free from the inauthentic everyday mode of existence. And this being towards death involves anticipation, more than just knowing we'll die someday. And here's the key, living in light of this possibility. Now, yeah, there's anxiety that comes with that, right? But there's also freedom, where we recognize that our death is our own. It's not something we will share with anyone else. And this concept has had a profound impact on existential philosophy and psychology, because it challenges us to live more authentically by confronting our own mortality. It's Heidegger's way of offering a reminder that death is meant to inspire us to live more fully. And the sixth piece was the question of being, and this is the big one. Heidegger believed that Western philosophy had forgotten the question of being by focusing on particular beings rather than being itself. It's as if we've been so busy categorizing trees, we forgot to ask what it means for a forest to exist. And Heidegger saw the forgetting of the question of being as the root problem of Western philosophy. He argued that since the time of Plato and Aristotle, philosophers had focused on beings, entities that exist, rather than being itself, the fact that things are. And this forgetfulness of being from Heidegger's perspective led to ontotheology, the tendency to ground all beings in a highest form like God or the Platonic forms, rather than investigating the meaning of being itself. Now, as a Christian pastor, I would disagree with Heidegger here. I think the question of being is a fundamental problem of Western philosophy, but not of Christian theology. I think our understanding of being is rooted in understanding God. But Heidegger's project was to reawaken this question of being. He believed that by interrogating our everyday understanding of being, we could uncover deeper truths about existence and our place in the world. And this focus on the question of being has had a huge impact on continental philosophy. It's influenced thinkers from Jean-Paul Sartre all the way to postmodernists. And it's challenged us to think more deeply about what it means to exist and how we understand reality. Next, the clearing. Heidegger uses this metaphor to describe the open space in which beings can show themselves as what they are. And this idea is going to influence a lot of later philosophers. And the clearing is one of Heidegger's most evocative metaphors for understanding how being discloses itself. Just as a clearing in a forest, it allows light to enter and things to become visible, the clearing is the open space in which beings can reveal themselves. And this concept is closely tied to Heidegger's idea of truth as unconcealment. For Heidegger, truth isn't about correct propositions, but about the way beings show themselves in the clearing. That the clearing is not something we create, but something we find ourselves in. It's the horizon that allows us to make sense of the world. And he sees it as both a gift and a task. That we're thrown into a particular historical and cultural clearing, but we also participate in shaping it. And this idea has been influential in hermeneutics, deconstruction, and other areas of continental philosophy, because it challenges us to think about how our understanding is always shaped by the particular clearing we inhabit. It's like Heidegger is saying we're all in a forest, but the shape of our clearing, it determines what we can see. Next, we have the Fourfold. Later in his career, he developed a poetic concept of the unity of earth, sky, divinities, and mortals. He was channeling his inner Tolkien, trying to capture the interconnectedness of existence. Now, critics might say this is where he kind of goes full mystical, but his supporters and fans, they see it as a profound meditation on dwelling poetically in the world. And the Fourfold, again, it's one of his later concepts, and it reflects his turns towards more poetic and mystical language. But I think it's his attempt to describe the interconnectedness of the unity of existence. And it comprises four things. First is earth, which is the grounding, kind of supporting element. Sky, the overarching and accompanying element. Divinities, the beckoning messengers of the Godhead. And mortals, you and I, human beings capable of death as death. For Heidegger, authentic dwelling, it involves a harmonious relationship with all four elements. That it's not about dominating nature or fleeing to a transcendent realm, but living poetically in the midst of this fourfold. And this concept has been influential in environmental philosophy and poetics, and it challenges us to think about our place in the world, not in terms of subject-object relation, but as a part of a rich, interconnected whole. So Heidegger's influence on 20th and 21st century thought, it is massive, but also controversial. His association with the Nazi Party, he joined in 1933, never publicly renounced or apologized for this. It has cast a long shadow over his philosophical legacy. He's a Wagner of philosophy, brilliant, influential, but comes with some very seriously problematic baggage. And though the man was not admirable, Heidegger's ideas have had a far reach. In existentialism, Heidegger's analysis of human existence was a major influencer on thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir. He provided the philosophical starter kit for a whole generation of angsty French intellectuals sipping espresso and smoking cigarettes. And then hermeneutics, his ideas about interpretation and understanding influenced thinkers like Gadamer. He turned the whole let's read between the lines into a philosophical approach. And then deconstruction. Jacques Derrida, his work was deeply influenced by Heidegger's critique of Western metaphysics. So if Heidegger came in like a wrecking ball, Derrida started the demolition party. And then environmental philosophy. His later works, with their focus on dwelling and the fourfold, they've been influential in eco-philosophy. Maybe most significant for us today is his technology critique. His essays on technology, particularly the questions concerning technology, they're very relevant in our digital age. It's like he foresaw our complicated relationship with tech way before smartphones, social media, and all the neurological rewiring was going on. And then 6, psychology and psychiatry. His ideas influence existential psychotherapy and psychiatrists everywhere. So love him, hate him, agree with him, or scratch your head in confusion. which I think is what I most often do, there's no denying that Heidegger left an indelible mark on modern thought. His dense prose, neologisms, again that $5 word, and radical rethinking of fundamental concepts continues to challenge and inspire thinkers across disciplines. So the next time you're pondering your existence, questioning the nature of reality, or just trying to figure out what it means to be authentically you in a world of social media and FOMO, remember old Martin. Now go forth and Dasein like you've never Dasein before.